Really interesting and important story coming out of the UN today. The Palestinians have proposed a permanent peace deal with Israel. So let me give you the breakdown so you understand all the specifics. First of all, it was Jordan that submitted the proposal to the UN because, of course, Palestine doesn't have full member status, so they're considered what's called an observer state. And they previously wanted to fast-track the vote to statehood. But now they realize that the U.S. and Israel will pull out the veto card at the drop of a pin. So they're like, whoa, let's walk on eggshells here and let's not fast-track the vote so we can allow for negotiation and discussion and try to come to some sort of reasonable conclusion. So first of all, quote, the draft resolution calls for peace between Israel and the Palestinians that fulfills the vision of two independent, democratic, and prosperous states. Let's pause there. From here on out, anytime you hear anybody say that, well, the Palestinians don't recognize Israel's right to exist. They don't recognize right to exist. I've heard that so many times it drives me fucking crazy. You say that's actually not true. That is incorrect. That's false. Because this peace deal, which they proposed, very clearly states, and I'll repeat it, the draft resolution calls for peace between Israel and the Palestinians that fulfills the vision of two independent, democratic, and prosperous states. So they do recognize Israel's right to exist. Now, whether or not Israel recognizes the Palestinians' right to exist is a totally different question. And as we move along here, you'll get a sense of where they fall on that. Now, the second thing, quote, whatever deal is reached should be implemented fully by the year 2017 with a 1-year time span to further iron out the details and negotiate. So in other words, they're saying, here's our draft, here's our peace proposal, and we're going to be reasonable, we're going to be open-minded. If you want to change some things, we're open to it. Let's have that conversation, and let's come to some sort of amicable deal. So, very reasonable. Implement whatever we come up with, implement it by 2017, and we'll give ourselves a year starting right now to iron out everything, okay? The third thing, quote, Jerusalem will be the shared capital of the two states, which fulfills the legitimate aspirations of both parties and protects freedom of worship. Again, I don't know how anybody could be more reasonable than that. They're saying, okay, let's, our side wants Jerusalem, your side wants Jerusalem, so what do we do? I don't know, maybe split it in two. We get half, you get half, shared capital, boom, there you go. Again, perfectly reasonable. The fourth thing, and this is probably the most important part, and it's the heart of the deal. They propose, quote, ending Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands captured in 1967. So, that means go to the 1967 borders. Now, understand something. That's more kind than I would be. The Palestinians are being more open-minded than I would be. Because as I've repeated many times on the show, what I think is the real solution, and the fair solution, I should say, is the 1947 borders. I don't believe in right to return for Palestinians, some hardliners do, because I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's any more possible than, the Cherokees and the Algonquins and all the Native Americans getting back all of the United States of America. I don't think that's possible, so we have to deal with the situation as it exists right now. And I've always maintained that, well, the original, in the original plan from the UN, the borders were the 1947 borders, so that was what the UN approved. So why not go back to what the original state of Israel is, and then, by the way, after that, let's say they did go back to the 1947 borders, well, then any argument afterwards, it would be like the Palestinians are wrong and the Israelis are right, because they went back to the original borders, so what do you mean? If there's, fighting that breaks out or what have you, and they want to take back that land too, then it's no, the Israelis are 100% right. But they're being more open-minded than I would be. They're saying, we're not even asking for 1947. We're asking for 1967. And look, understand something. There are people who I've had conversations with who are really, really on the side of Israel, let's say. And even they admit, yes, I think we should do 1967 borders. So this is something that, again, it's beyond reasonable. They're essentially pulling in Obama. You know how when Obama negotiates with the Republicans, he goes, take the healthcare example. All right, let's do a public option. Okay, well, you already moved in their direction from the beginning because their true progressive position is single payer. But you didn't bring that up at all, and you said, I'll start by conceding to you, and we'll do that, right? And then the compromise, of course, became the Republicans' plan, which is to mandate everybody go to the private health insurance companies and buy insurance on their own. This is essentially that. They're not starting out hardline and saying 1947 or right to return. No. They're starting out by saying 1967 will be reasonable here. So now we dig a little deeper. Quote, Jordan's ambassador has made it clear she did not want to submit a resolution that did not have consensus. In other words, language that might trigger a U.S. veto. So again, here we are back to that idea. They're saying, I think what that means is they've tried to propose something I'd support more in the past. In the past, I'm sure they have proposed 1947 borders, and they have been stronger on their side, right? And just immediately you have Israel and the U.S. go, veto. So they're like, okay, 1967. So in other words, they're saying, look, we are going to be open-minded, be human beings, and work with us. So we come to the U.S. response. What did the U.S. say? Secretary of State John Kerry said, quote, we don't have any problem with them filing some resolution, providing it's done in the spirit of working with people to see how we could proceed forward in a thoughtful way that solves the problem and doesn't make it worse. Okay, what does that mean? They asked you, what do you think about this specific proposal? And he's like, well, I have no problem with them submitting a proposal. Thanks. Like, what does that mean? Well, I don't understand what that means. You're not answering the question. You're sidestepping it. Okay, so the U.S. is clearly staking out a position of, us? We're not involved in this at all. We're just a witty-bitty USA. Now, here's the bombshell. Netanyahu already responded, quote, attempts of the Palestinians and of several European countries to force conditions on Israel will only lead to a deterioration in the regional situation and will endanger Israel. Therefore, we will strongly oppose this. Wait, no, come on, man. I mean, the guy's like a cartoon character. Listen to what he just said. So, again, the Palestinians proposed this plan. Very moderate, very reasonable. In fact, they bend over backwards to accommodate the Israeli position. They say, 1967, fine, we'll do that, okay? Here. And also, we're willing to negotiate even after we conceded to you. We'll have a year of negotiations, and then we'll implement the plan by 2017. And what's Netanyahu's response? Well, you're deteriorating the regional situation, and you're forcing Israel to do this, and we strongly oppose it. They're not forcing you to do anything. They're saying, hey, here's a reasonable proposal, and can we have a conversation? And he said, no, I strongly oppose this, because you're forcing Israel. Forcing you to do what? They're asking to negotiate and compromise. They want to hear you out, and they want to come to a solution for a lasting peace deal. So what's the conclusion? It's unavoidable. Netanyahu does not want peace. He does not want peace. He does not want a two-state solution. Everything he says in public to the contrary is bullshit. It's rhetoric. He's talking out of his ass. And then he wonders why you have some Palestinians who get very angry and try to defend their land using force. And also, might I add, we know what happened recently. As the Palestinians are proposing a peace deal and going to the UN, what's Netanyahu doing? Annexing more land. You have to understand, man, how would you respond if somebody from a different country walked into your country, or somebody from a different house on your block walked into your house and said, get out. Mine now. And they did it at the barrel of a gun. What would you do? What would you do? You've put the Palestinians in a situation where there is no answer for them because nobody's really looking out for them to come to a solution. And then you turn around when people get mad and they turn militant, you turn around and say, "Ah, goddamn savages and barbarians, look at them. See, now we know that everything we do against them is justified because look at how violent they are." And we go round and round and round and round, and the cycle does not stop. The only way you're going to get a lasting peace deal and a two-state solution is if you negotiate and you get a lasting peace deal and a two-state solution. In order to compromise and in order to negotiate, you need two sides who are willing to do so. We're not at that point. One side is willing to compromise, the other one isn't. So what should we do? You fucking force the other people to the table. How do you do that? You know that Cuban embargo that we're not so hot on anymore? How about we take that embargo and we slap it on Israel? How about we do sanctions on Israel? How about we cut all financial aid to Israel and we rally everybody else to do the same, all the other countries to do the same? You treat them like apartheid South Africa. You cut off their economy and then they go, "Okay, now we'll do peace with black people. We love black people." Sure you do, you sick sons of bitches. That's why we had to force you to the table, right? But eventually they got to the table. Eventually Nelson Mandela freed his people. Eventually there was a deal. We need to do the same thing because the Likud party and the Netanyahu government and the hardliners in Israel, they have the guns, they have the power, and they're taking more and more land, and they don't want to hear anything about compromise. Well, we need to make them hear about compromise.